Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Qadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahushua, which the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahushua. And pretty much this is going to be a brief video just showing you that there's another language called Sanskrit, which it uses the same similar I sound as Paleo Hebrew. So I'm just going to briefly bring that up. And pretty much this lesson is just to show you that you got to be fully persuaded in your own mind. You have to study for yourself so that you could defend the gospel, so that you know you're in the truth. So when these false prophets that arise, that's sent by these people you see on the screen, the Edomites, right, which is the so-called white man, the sea line, to try and deceive our people, you got to understand and know for yourself as an individual in this truth how to debunk particular breakdowns, how to debunk anything false. All right, you don't just be following men because you think they cool, you like their style, how they talk, you like their charisma. That's cool and all, but what about you as a believer? Because what if a doctrine come out and because you don't study, now all of a sudden you become shaky and doubtful? You're supposed to be unmovable in this truth. You're supposed to be grounded and settled. The only way to do that is ultimately through Yahweh, Yahushua, being a part of the elect, but ultimately your experience going through trials and tribulations, but as well as studying. All right, men have become great teachers because they study. It was under the tutelage of the apostles, you know, the different elders, and then the men under them, and even the men under them. We all become good teachers after a while through experience and studying. All right, so I'm going to read a little bit of scriptures, because these next few videos I'm going to be doing is just pretty much debunking TGC Ministries, which is Deacon Haka and so-called Brother Assad, you know, their new YouTube channel that's getting all these subscribers. You know, they teach a false doctrine. They're trying to say that we don't know the Hebrew, you know, the Lashawan Qadash that's adding unto the word now. You know, it's just a lot of buffoonery. You know, they spreading a lot of confusion, a lot of false doctrine. All right. So I'm going to read this, 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15. It says, study. Let's go into this word of study. Let's go into this word study. Strong G 4704. Right?
Strong's G 4704. Spudazo.
For the word study in the Greek, to hasten, make haste, to exert oneself, endeavor, give diligence. So you got to give diligence on your own free time to study things. You don't want to just be out there just, you know, being a mockingbird or a parakeet. You got to know things for yourself. The Lord said, who's going to stand up for me against the evildoers? You know, roughly paraphrasing. You got to defend the gospel. You got to defend the correct doctrine. If you don't know the doctrine or the correct gospel, then you can't defend anything. You won't be able to highlight in the spirit or even have the spirit of discernment to know when a guy's a righteous prophet or a false prophet. So continuing on, right? This is 2 Timothy 2 and 15. It says, study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So when we rebuke and correct people and tell you that the Most High is going to destroy particular individuals for teaching false doctrine, it's because we can identify that through the Spirit. The Lord has given us the eye salve and the spirit of discernment. And we've been telling y'all for years that Sakari, the Genesis camp, as well as this TGC Ministries, that they're all off. They're false prophets. They don't teach a doctrine that's going to make you wise unto salvation. It says, but shun profane and vain babblings, for they will increase unto more ungodliness. And that's what's going on. Now everything is being questioned by them. Why? Because they're not Yahweh's sheep. They're trying to say that Lashawan Qadash is adding unto the word, that we in violation of the law in Deuteronomy 4 and 2. But if you use a modern Hebrew, you're adding unto the word, because that's not even the original language. That's not even the language our forefathers were speaking. So really, they adding unto the word. Really, they breaking the law. Because when you read in the Old and New Testament, it's literally laws to have faith and call upon Yahweh and Yahweh, not to give praise to another God. You saying Yahshua or Yehoshua, because he's saying that that's what the names are, Dika Hakah, as well as so-called Brother Assad. You know, they're saying that. They're saying, oh, God's name is El. Like, come on. But see, that's what happens. Because he believes on the wisdom of this world. He needs validation from scholars in this world to teach and do videos. That's not divinely inspired by the Holy Spirit. All right? Like the apostles say, we believe in this through faith, the Lashawan Qadash. But there is ways to prove it, that it was a language that actually exists, that we didn't just come up with it. All right? I'm reading the NLT version. This is 2 Timothy 2 and 15 again, the NLT. It says, I'll start at 14, 2 Timothy 2 and 14. Remind everyone about these things and command them in God's presence, right? Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai's presence, to stop fighting over words. Such arguments are useless, and they can ruin those who hear them. Work hard, meaning study, so you can present yourselves to the Most High and receive His approval. Be a good worker. A lot of men they're not good workers. They don't do videos. They barely come to camp, right? You got individuals, they've been in a comment board for all these years, some over a decade, and never once in their spirit thought to do a video. It says, I'm talking about the men of Israel. It says, one who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly explains the word of truth. You got to explain the word of truth, right? Yeah, we do videos linking up the current events with Bible prophecy. That's automatic. That's what we're going to talk about every Saturday. That's automatic. That's easy. That's super automatic. All right? But you're supposed to be studying the breakdowns too. You got to read the chapters, you know, when the Spirit permits. Take some time out of your day and do videos on it so you could memorize it better. When you do a video, you'll memorize things better. All right? It says, avoid worthless, foolish talk that only leads to more godless behavior. This kind of talk spreads like cancer, as in the case of Hymenaeus and Philetus. You know? So the same actions that Deacon Hakah and so-called Brother Assad is doing, he's doing the same thing that these two fallouts that used to follow Apostle Paul is doing and did. Alright? It says, I mean, that's good, but I don't need that right now. So now, let's go here, right? So this is Zephaniah chapter 3 and verse 9. And it reads, because this is an end time prophecy, for then will I turn to the people. Who's the people? The Israelites, but more importantly, the elect of the nation of Israel, right? It says a pure language. Pure meaning undefiled. The language of the heavens, which is only the Paleo Hebrew. Paleo Hebrew and modern Hebrew is two different languages. The ancient Israelites wasn't speaking modern Hebrew. This is a new language that these Zionist Edomite converts that say they are Jews and are not, this is the shit they came up with under Ben Yahudi. All right? Because their argument was, we don't know the sacred name of God, so we all going to agree and call him Yahweh. Look, ain't no E's in Paleo Hebrew. All right? you add the ah sound to the YHWH, and it's going to spell Yahweh. All right? Continuing on, it says, for then will I turn to the people, the elect of the nation of Israel, a pure language, which is only the Paleo Hebrew. And yes, it was a language that existed. All right? It existed before One West. But the scriptures say what? We would discontinue from our heritage. There would be a great falling away first. So, of course, over time, constantly going into captivity, all right, being persecuted, living in the land of our enemies, which is the 17 heathen nations. Of course, we would forget particular things, but in the last days, which is right now, the Lord will put the Spirit on us to remember ourselves in the land of our captivity. Continuing on, it says, for then will I turn to the people of pure language, that they, the elect of the nation of Israel. Didn't the scripture say in 2nd Ezra, the 2nd chapter, from verses 40 on down, it talks about how they confess the name of the Son of God in the world, how they confess the name and stood so stiffly for the name of Yahweh and Yahushua. Then the scriptures say in Ecclesiastes 17:10, I just did videos on it, so it's fresh in my brain right now. All right? Then they say that the elect will praise the holy name of the Most High. That ain't talk about no transliteration. That's talking about the Paleo Hebrew. That's common sense. Anybody going against that just wants to teach according to their own private interpretation, and the Most High put the spirit of delusion on them. They set up as a false prophet in these last days to try and separate you and sow the spirit of doubt in your mind, to make you think as an Israelite that the name of Yahweh is not the name of the Father, and Yahushua is not the name of the only begotten Son, the Messiah. For then will I turn to the people of pure language, that they may all call upon the name of Yahweh to serve him, the Mark said. You're not doing that if you call upon the name of Yahweh or Yahushua in modern Hebrew, English, Greek, Latin, any other language outside of Paleo Hebrew. All right? Now I'm going to read this real quick. Now, this is Google. I typed in Zephaniah 3 verse 9, or Zeph 3 verse 9 Paleo Hebrew, right? That's what popped up, AROV. Zephaniah 3 and 9 in Hebrew discusses a pure language, or pure lips, right? It says that will be restored, allowing peoples, right? Ultimately, it begins with the elect of the nation of Israel. But in the kingdom, the heathen nations will serve Yahweh and Yahushua in their rightful names. They won't worship their idol-worshiping false gods, because they're going to be under our authority. But as far as for the Lord's people, he will give him his name again, as well as his son's name again right now in the end times. It says, allowing Israelites, I'm going to read it correctly, to worship Yahweh while Yahushua in unity. That's what the elect would do, because the elect ain't just one person. It says Paleo Hebrew represents these words using pictographic characters, which I'm going to show you, rather than the modern square script, emphasizing the original meaning of purified speech. All right? Let's go down here. These guys is doing 3 and 4 hour videos on absolutely nothing. They're not saying anything at all. It says pure Hebrew context, pure language, right? It says, while often interpreted as Hebrew, right? And then they got the word this, sapa'ah, means lip or edge. Let's go down here. It says, some interpret this as purified speech, removing lies, or a return to the original language of creation. That's what it's talking about. How is you going to call upon the name of the Lord? What language did the Lord speak? What language did he talk to Moses in? In the modern Hebrew? That didn't exist back then. They didn't have the Nakud dot and all that shit that they're using now back then. Continuing on. It says Paleo representation. The letters in Paleo Hebrew are pictographic, with each letter having a concrete meaning, right? And I'm going to show you what it's talking about. Yep. So it says, you See all that right there? They cited in discussions regarding the restoration of Hebrew. All right? So the modern Hebrew that these Zionist Edomite converts are speaking, that's not Paleo Hebrew. All right? So that's it with that. Now, let's get into it. And then I'll close the lesson with Luke 21. So this is from a book that I got, and I just did a lesson on it. Lord willing, I'll do more videos on it. It's pretty much an individual that believes and studied the Lashawan Qadash, and they came up with this dictionary. Pretty good. It says Lashawan Qadash Paleo Hebrew Concise Dictionary, right? So that's the cover of it. So I'm going all the way right, and then I'm gonna go left, just like how you read it in Hebrew, right? So let's go through it. It says Paleo Hebrew and Aramaic modern Hebrew characters with Proto-Hebrew pronunciations. As you can see here, right? Paleo Hebrew, right? Ilaf Bayath, / alphabet characters and meanings. As you can see all that right there. You can pause the screen, do all that. And then this is what I was talking about, Sanskrit. Because they acting like you can't have a language that only has sounds to it. So as you can see, this Sanskrit alphabet, it says alphabet with English transliteration, and you can see how that is, right? Now it says Sanskrit, another ancient language, vocalizes each consonant with without specifically marking that sound. Hebrew likewise need not mark vowels. The only existing vowel, which is the AH, was presumed for every consonant when writing. The Hebrews actually meant, all right, so there you go. So now, let's go here. This is dealing with Hebrew scripts and artifacts. Let's start right here. It says, zoom all the way in on that. A portion of the Aleppo Codex. It says the Hebrew Torah was pristinely inscribed with an alphabet akin to that of the Samaritans and Phoenicians, but after the expatriation of Israelites into Babylon, it was transcribed with the Chaldean square alphabet, which is Aramaic, which was still used even until 1,000 years ago for the Aleppo Codex, and beyond since it is still being used today as the characters in modern Hebrew. It says Proto-Hebrew and the Phoenician Hebrew. It says, let's go down here. It says Phoenicia was located north of YASHARAHLA, centered around the biblical cities of Sidon and Tyre, in contemporary Lebanon between the 16th and 3rd century BC. And you can see that. All right. Now let's go left now. It says Hebrew scripts and artifacts. Let's zoom in. It says Proto/Paleo Hebrew and the Samaritan alphabet. It says the Samaritan Torah scroll. The Samaritans still preserve the Pentateuch in the old Hebrew characters. All right. 1691, Henry Dodwell. Let's go down here, read a little more about the Samaritan Torah scroll. It says, and these 5 books of the Samaritans still having among them written in the old Hebrew or Phoenician character, which was in the use among them before the Babylonian captivity, and in which both these and all other scriptures were written, till Ezra transcribed them into that of the Chaldeans. And this is by Humphrey Pradix. This is what he wrote in 1799. It says, during the Babylonian captivity, they received from the Chaldees the square character in common use. And in the time of Ezra, the old Hebrew manuscripts were copied into Chaldee characters. So it says the 1831 edition of the Encyclopedia Americana. All right. So that's it with that. Got some more here. It's a famous one everybody know. The Manasseh inscription. That got the name of the Most High up in there. It says, let's get real close with that. It says the Manasseh with toll called the Moabite stone was discovered in 1868 in the biblical city of Dibon, the capital of the Moabites. The inscription was inscribed with the same letters as the Phoenician, Old Hebrew, and Samaritan, and it was discovered that the Moabite language was additionally identically tantamount to Hebrew with some minor variations, meaning it was similar. All right? So that's that. Let's go down here. It says the Siloam inscription. The Siloam inscription discovered in 1880 is inscribed on the wall of Hezekiah's tunnel, which connects Gihon Spring to the pool of Siloam in East Jerusalem. Let's go down here. That's the Giza calendar. Let's go left. It says, as you can see here, the letter Bayath in Proto-Hebrew, Samaritan, and Phoenician. You can see all that similar because they were speaking the same thing, right? Back during that particular generation. It says the Hebrews written characters were the same as the Phoenician, to which the letters of the Samaritan's manuscript approached the nearest, the 1831 edition of the Encyclopedia Americana. So these are people that did research close to almost 200 years ago, and pretty much they're validating everything we're teaching here at Great Millstone as far as us having a Lashawan Qadash, the language, and that it's not the same as modern Hebrew. The learned world had almost universally allowed that the Phoenician language was, with few exceptions, identical with the Hebrew. That's what somebody from Foreign Quarterly Review, 1838, publication. So found in Sidon with Phoenician inscription. It says the first major revelation connecting the Phoenician alphabet and language occurred on the 12th. It says fortuitously denuded an archaic sarcophagus in Sidon, a Phoenician city. All right. So that's it with that. Let's go to the next one. This is another stone. You can see them characters. It says the Tildan inscription. The Tildan stele, which was discovered in northern Israel in 1993. It's my birth year. Exhibits Canaanite inscriptions utilizing the same old Hebrew script we are concerned with. The inscription authentically reveal another astonishing fact. Yeah, you can clearly see that's Paleo Hebrew right there. All right. Let's go down here. It says the phrases King of Israel top and the house of David bottom. The inscription includes the phrase Malach YASHARAHLA, which is in the Paleo Hebrew, meaning King of Israel, and the line below reads Bayath Dawad, right? Meaning house of David. These phrases are extra biblical evidence sustaining the essay of not only the nation of Israel, but withal King David. It says Africans with Proto-Hebrew and Phoenician origins, Semitic and Hamitic. It says Proto-Hebrew in Carthage. It says approximately 4,000 inscriptions were excavated or evacuated from the ruins of Carthage, North Africa, to which Nahum, I guess I'll go over here, during the excavation or evacuation, probably pronouncing that wrong too, but you see what it's spelled there, of the city of Giza, 30 miles from Jerusalem. It says a limestone tablet was discovered in 1908 with a Hebrew inscription written in the old Hebrew alphabet. There you go. This is some more. It says a Lachish Astrakhan. Excuse me, I was looking at something. It says in 1935, 18th Ostraka, excuse me, broken pottery fragments were discovered in the antediluvian city of Lachish with Hebrew inditing in the old Hebrew alphabet. I'll zoom in on it. The next one, it says an Ammonite inscription. In 1966, an inscription was discovered in Amman, Jordan, with an Ammonite inscription whose alphabet and language was similar to that of the Phoenicians and Hebrews. We all used to talk the same language at one time before the Lord split the languages up during the Tower of Babel. All right. So that's it with that. Let's see if I got some more. Let's see. Yep, it's gonna be the last page. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. I'll read a little bit about this. It says Nahum postulates. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. You know, my bad. Search it up yourself. Concerning the language of the inscriptions, that this recalled Phoenician language is nothing more nor less than Hebrew. Yeah, the Phoenicians spoke Paleo Hebrew. All right. It says, yep, that is recalled Phoenician language is nothing more than Paleo Hebrew dialect, nearly the same as was spoken in the country of Israel. All right, there you go. It says Europa Jews of Nigeria and Proto-Hebrew origins. It says in southern Nigeria are a tribe who the natives call the Imo Yokwam outlandish people, who however called themselves Bani Ephraim / sons of Ephraim. The Proto-Hebrew word for father is Abba, and in the sons of Ephraim's tongue it is Yabba, which is similar. It says the Proto-Hebrew word for mother is Ima, and in sons of Ephraim's tongue it is Ima, which exhibits and is one of many denotements regarding a Hebrew history in their past, which is proof that what? We fled into the territories of West Africa speaking this language. Even the slaves had Paleo Hebrew names, all right? They were speaking Hebrew. But in school, they try to make it seem like we stupid and illiterate. We didn't fucking talk English. That's it. They had to beat that into us. So that's it with that. Yep, Proto-Hebrew origins and the names of victims of the transatlantic slave trade. It says Hebrew Israelites that were taken mostly from the west coast of Africa as slaves into the Americas during the transatlantic slave trade are known to have had names that contain obvious signs of Proto-Hebrew roots, right? When they say Proto-Hebrew, they're talking about Paleo Hebrew. It says even now, for example, if you were to type the root word Yah, a shortened term for the Most High, into slave voyage databases, such as on the transatlantic slave voyagers.org, you will find an abundance of names with the Proto-Hebrew root words contained in them. Names such as Inya, Akia, Hanya, and Beniya, right, are just a few examples of the Proto-Hebrew names of victims that can be found in these records that were captured from regions described as being Hebo, right, or Hebos, or Hebrews, and Igbo, among others, with the commonly used root word Yah, and whose described regions of descent in these databases in itself sound a lot like the word Hebrew. All right, so we definitely the people, because remember the Southern Kingdom, which you had a small remnant of Northern Kingdom as well. You know, they stuck by the Southern Kingdom. You know, you had like a small population, even during the time of the Lord. They talk about that in Luke the 2nd chapter. That Asherite woman, Asher is a part of the northern kingdom, right? The lost 10 tribes of Israel. So you had the southern kingdom, which is Judah, Benjamin, Levi. They fled into the terrors of Africa, fleeing Roman persecution. Something we always bring out, right? And we was keeping the laws to the best of our abilities, speaking Paleo Hebrew in Africa. That's why you got them different tribes in Africa that could speak Paleo Hebrew, or the language is similar to Paleo Hebrew. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, you had the lost 10 tribes of Israel. They was calling on the name Yahabashai and Yahweh. When you read books like Lost Promised Lands, right, by James Adair, History of the American Indians, yeah, they were speaking Hebrew as well. So it's just more proof that, like, we're the people. Everything we teaching is 100% factual. It can actually be proven with books, but it's all about having faith. All right. So I'm gonna just close it with this. This is Luke 21 and verse 15. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. The ancient Hebrew is not lost. We have the Lashawan Qadash. We have the Hebrew. We're fulfilling prophecy, calling upon and having faith upon the names Yahweh and Yahabashai, in order to what? Be made wise unto salvation. I'm reading the NLT, and that's it for the lesson. This is Luke 21:15. It says, for I will give you the right words of such wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to reply or refute you. That's it. Because if you reply and refute, and you rather go with, you know, the Edomites, then clearly you're a sellout. All right? Being in the truth is not about how scholarly you are, and, you know, how well you could speak and pronounce words and do 5-hour lessons. It's all about, are you teaching the truth? And teaching the truth, do you have faith? Can you prove what you're saying? All right? So Lord willing, you was edified. Shalom.